Welcome to the Aussie Game Podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. Cristian Volpato has switched his allegiance to Australia just days before the deadline to submit the Socceroos squad. Will he make the final 26, and just how will he be used? The Socceroos continue their World Cup preparation with a 1-0 loss to Mexico, a sluggish first start, followed by an improved second half. Is this tactical, or are there larger concerns the day before the World Cup squad is announced? During the week, we also saw Football Australia hold their AGM with more financial losses on the way. Our overseas wrap includes more silverware for Aussies plus European qualifiers, and the A-League premiers announced 8 departures. What a week it's been, Mopper.
Yeah, great week, trophy week for a few Australians. So, at the business end of the season. So we always love highlighting those factors. So well done. We'll debrief them a little bit later. And yeah, allegiances are back on the radar, and we have a very important announcement, which has been obviously highlighted during the week, and we'll hear all the discussion points and facts around that, and what people's opinions are on this decision. And as we'll know, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, we will know our 26 for the World Cup.
It's funny you say it's the business end of the season, because I was pondering that today, whether it is that or it's silly season or it's World Cup season. It's a season. I don't know where we're at. There's a lot of football going on.
That's it. There's a bit of everything. All right, let's break it down, my friend.
All right, let's start with the big news that broke on Friday evening by Joey Lynch that Cristian Volpato had declared for Australia and would be joining the Socceroos in Florida. This one's sure to divide plenty of opinion, mate, because plenty of people saying that with his previous comments in the past about the jersey and some little snipes that he's had on social media, that he should never be around the Socceroos again, and plenty prepared to look past that and just thinking what a talent this guy is and what he might be able to provide as an immediate impact into this World Cup. Where do you quite sit on this one?
Yeah, it's all comments are valid, because the way it's been handled has brought this situation aboard, hasn't it? And we all know the background to it, and people will be divided just by those comments that you discussed around Volpato, strenuously putting himself up there. He really wanted to play for Italy. But the situation is Italy hasn't made the World Cup, and they haven't made the World Cup for a while now, and their future looks not too clear. And I guess when you have to sum it up as a player, is it right to him to switch allegiances or look at Australia and Italy? Well, he's got every right to do so, because he's not capped at senior level. So his options are open, and they're on the table, and he's just had to weigh those decisions up, hasn't he? And obviously he's gone and made a decision, I think, which is probably a safe bet for himself, that he will get more opportunities for the Socceroos. Popovic, it's clear, went over there with Ocon to have a discussion with him. And these are probably the contradictory parts of the process, isn't it? Because obviously Popovic stated that, you've got to earn your jersey. He's not going to chase players. But the contradiction came when he went and made that special trip. Now, whether that's right or wrong in people's eyes, obviously Popovic wants him part of the setup. Graham Arnold asked 4 years ago and was declined. But obviously 4 years is a long time in football. And it comes down again to the individual, isn't it? Like, he's got to assess where on the world stage has he got the best opportunity. So I don't mind players looking for that situation. Some players have got the capability of doing that due to dual allegiance. I don't have any problem with players making those decisions, because obviously there's a lot of things that they have to weigh up in their football careers. And, World Cups only come around every 4 years. Again, the debatable stuff is the contradictory that Popovic has stated that he doesn't chase people. And then the comments, like you said, they weren't in good taste, were they? And was sarcastic of Volpato. One, he can only say, does he regret? But then you hear Soccerdi in his interview and said it was just a matter of time in the process. So, but I think we all know deep down that if Italy was knocking on his door, he would have gone there. Yeah, let's just admit that. But the process and where Italy's at is as a high risk commodity, isn't it, for him? And he's just taken a low risk option because, again, probably Australian football have got 6 World Cups in a row now. and the opportunity is there for him to play. Popper stated that he wanted him part of the squad, so did Graham Arnold. So it's probably an easy decision in the end when you think about Australia. They're in the World Cup. He can probably get in this squad and probably will be now.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a few of your points there. And certainly, I mean, I can't see a world in which he's not picked in the 26-man squad tomorrow morning, given all the runaround that he's had to do in the last couple of days to make himself eligible for this World Cup. So let's assume that he's in the 26-man squad. And then it's about how he's going to be used in terms of his kind of long-term future. Once he plays one game at the World Cup, and it does have to be a competitive game before you're tied internationally, but he'll be there now. Yes, and Tony Popovic said that it wasn't him that went and chased Volpato. It was definitely Volpato that expressed his interest at the last minute. And you're right to point out that the Riley McGree shaped hole that has been left with that injury, Volpato will come in and slot into that space. So, look, it's an exciting prospect. I can understand different points of view, people not happy that he's been considered. I can also understand people thrilled about the potential of what he can do. But you're right in terms of him not being tested too much at a higher level. So we'll very much see what it's all about. We'll get onto the game soon, but what I am seeing a lot of people talk about is the kind of future of this team and the likes of Mo Toure leading the line and Nestor Irankunda and then Cristian Volpato in behind, which is very exciting to think about on paper. But based on what we saw today, I don't think that kind of mix is even on Popovic's radar. I think that's going to look too risky for him. But look, we'll get to that in a sec. But look, I think say the positive signs. He will be tied to Australia after this World Cup. I have no doubt about that. And then it's about what Cristian Volpato looks like in the Socceroos' future. I think, those people doubting his prospects or not sure of what he's done in the past, a World Cup goal, a winning goal perhaps, will certainly set people straight, and people will soon forget these things have happened. But the spotlight is certainly going to be on him either way things work out.
Yeah, it's a storyline, isn't it? And like you said, remember Graham Cole, he just that everyone remembers that Argentina moment, that last opportunity. Yeah, so it's football moves very fast, and it'll be up to him to prove himself, yeah, and see whether he belongs. So he'll get the opportunity, no doubt, and yeah, we look forward to it. Yeah, it's the unknown factor. I think that's the big thing, isn't it? Like, it's the whole unknown factor in the setup and how he plays. So let's see if he can rise to that level. And yeah, good luck to him. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing that squad tomorrow, 11:30, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well said, mate. Let's get on to today's game against Mexico. Cristian Volpato was spoken about by Popovic yesterday in the press conference that he might be part of the setup, but he wasn't included in the matchday squad. But let's go through the starting lineup. We had Matty Ryan in goals, Jacob Italiano at right back, Alessandro Gicardi inside him, Harry Suter had his first Socceroos cap for a long time, playing in the middle. Lucas Harrington still keeping out Cam Burgess there at the back. Geordie Boss at left back. The two sixers were Aidan O'Neill and Jackson Irvine. And then Connor Metcalf, Matt Leckie in front of them with Mo Toure up front. What did you make of that starting lineup, mate?
Yeah, it was a lot stronger than I expected. And I did note that Joe Gauci wasn't in that squad either. So that's quite interesting. Look, it was a lot stronger. Obviously, Harrington, they're still trying to test him out in the waters. But I think everyone else looks spot on for their positions. It's almost like this is the closest to the first 11 what we'll probably play against Turkey. Probably not Leckie. I don't think Leckie would start against Turkey, but yeah, I think that is damn close to probably his best. Without probably, like you said, Irakunda in that like maybe behind that 10, but maybe like you said, he might not want to open up to attacking. So I think that is a lot stronger than what I thought, and straight in the World Cup preparations. And I thought rather than probably thinking who's those last few players that have an opportunity, and that showed in the substitutions as well, very late subs, so there wasn't really much opportunity. So I think he's pretty clear on what he wants to do, and he's used that training camp obviously to finalise that 26, and this was more like, right, this is how we need to set up in the first game. So yeah, no, curious direction, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with getting his squad together, even though a few of them had just only finished their program. But yeah, they're a strong and competitive side, and yeah, it's interesting with Harrington, isn't it? Like that's probably the most interesting one. Him and Lecky, where do they fit in? But looks like Harrington's definitely going to be a shoo-in, and looks like Lecky's going to be part of that 26 as well, doesn't it? Like, so that's probably resolved those answers, but all will be unveiled tomorrow.
Well, for me, I tend to agree with you in the main, but yeah, I think the two positions, Harrington, that's his third start in a row, I believe Robbie Thompson said in commentary. So definitely starting to solidify his spot there at the back. And also mentioned by Robbie Thompson that Cam Burgess played all minutes of the championship season for Swansea this season. So probably a bit hard done by for Cam Burgess, but obviously Popovic preferring Lucas Harrington at the moment, but that could be potentially a coin flip. In that position, maybe he likes a bit more of Harrington's speed as opposed to Burgess's presence. That could be a factor as well. Yeah, look, I could see that back eight, including O'Neill and Irvine being our starters for the World Cup. Connor Metcalf, I think, probably plays a bit of that Riley McGree role, a bit of that playmaker in that 10 position. Lecky, I didn't think had his strongest game today, so maybe that's a Volpato or a Nirankunda starting in that kind of role come World Cup time, and expect Mo Toure to start up front. So yeah, I definitely didn't expect to see the strongest starting lineup. I thought that might be saved for the Switzerland game. I thought he might be testing a few more players, but yeah, it looks like he's pretty settled on who he wants to go with.
Yep, it was strong intent. And let's break down the game, mate. And what were your early thoughts on well, might as well start with the first half performance. There's probably the most talking points in that first half.
Yeah, well, it was flat, wasn't it, that first half? Mexico had three shots in the first 90 seconds. The game, a couple blocked and a couple that went out of play. But yeah, just I think we were so slow to come out of the blocks. Mexico dominated. We don't expect to dominate possession, but there's a difference between not dominating and sitting right back, which we were. Fortunately for us, our defense is reasonably solid, so we were able to deal with most of it. But yeah, not too much going forward at all. Few little forays, mainly down the left, but not much happening. Jackson Irvine had our first shot of the game, little poked effort set up by Lucas Harrington. Matty Ryan, nice save from a header in the 25th minute, but not long after. This was where Mexico's goal came from. And the fact that it came from a corner where we've got so much height and ability in that box is pretty disappointing. This one, it was Aidan O'Neill that just misjudged the header a little bit and went over his head, and his opponent got the flick on and went in off the far post. But probably a concern for me that we should be dealing with 99% of those balls coming into the box from set pieces.
Yeah, I definitely think there was two corners there in that first half. Lecky got caught out on the other, and that was probably the warning sign. But yeah, I don't think O'Neill should be just outside the 6 yards. Should be probably more in the penalty spot. Yeah, I think one of those larger defenders should have come out. I think he got exposed with height, but tactically well done to Mexico because they picked him out, didn't they? Like they put those corners right on the spot. They knew where our weaknesses were. They did their little bit of homework. I've got no doubt because where those corners were dropping are right in those areas where we're uncomfortable. And yeah, probably that you want to see Jackson Irvine or one of the Sicardi or one of the bigger boys, Harrington, getting out, pushing out on that near post, but they just didn't move and exposed O'Neill one-on-one, didn't they? And obviously he just wasn't tall enough to deal with it, and probably not the body in there either. I said you'd probably want him on the top of the penalty box at best. Heading's not his strength. So, yeah, he got exposed, but Mexico did the same thing to Lecky too. They exposed him as well at the back post. There was a second corner there, which nearly resulted in another goal as well. So I think Mexico, very smart and sharp with their set pieces.
And then not too much happened after that. The few little fracas that opened up. Of course, we had the mandatory drinks break in the middle of that first half as well. And the best chance for Australia in the first half fell to Mohamed Toure, where a misplaced defensive header from a Mexico player fell to Mo Toure. The keeper stranded and just had to lob it over him and into the net, and he pushed it just wide. But I think what it did do, and we've seen Mo Toure for Norwich just gobble those chances up in his time there. But what it did show is that the way that we're going to set up and play is that when we get these one or maybe two chances in the game, we're going to have to take them if we're going to take some points against our World Cup opponents. And just unfortunately for Toure, he's pushed that one wide. But look, it probably wrapped up a very poor first half from the Socceroos, completely dominated with possession, and they just sat back and look, not much happening at all. The second half was a lot better, and we started very well in the first kind of 10 to 15 minutes, put plenty of pressure on Mexico. A few block shots there around the 48th minute, and then a long distance strike from O'Neill that was pretty well saved. And then Aiden Rustic probably had the second best, if not the best, chance for the Socceroos all game when he was played in by Kai Truan, but unfortunately fell to his right foot, and he just probably didn't have the confidence or the power to get the shot past the keeper, and it was blocked by the defender anyway. But our first half starts, mate, it's becoming a pattern for us, unfortunately. And yeah, we just can't get going, can we, in these first halves?
Yeah, look, I broke it down again, and first of all, before I want to get in those patterns what you discussed, because it's a very important talking point. I thought overall it's a really good friendly, wasn't it? Like just under 80,000, really hostile crowd. This is what we're going to probably face, especially in the second game against America. So I think great experience, great exposure to that high level. The intensity was high as well. So I thought all positives. This is exactly what you need. Did we create the big moments for Rustic and Toure? Yes. So they were there. So just lacking a bit of composure. But again, we want them in the big moments to get, to be obviously comfortable and be composed. So look, I'd rather get that out in the friendlies, that we did create those opportunities, did put them under pressure in certain points of the game. So I think there was still a lot of positives to talk about. Suda was back. Really good hit out for Suda. So I think that was good. Good to test out Lecky. Where was he at with his level? Is the game a little bit faster and higher for him? So yeah, he got a little bit exposed to certain things, but again, long time out of football. I think it was over 700 days. So, those were another good testing point. So I think there's a lot of good positive testing points there that we would have got out of that game, especially in that environment. And it was a good intense hit out. So I think all of them are positive. But like you said, let's go back. Where are the opportunities? Because a lot of people are very frustrated over this, but it's really been, like you said, the same patterns. So let's break down these little patterns. First half, 76% possession to Mexico, 24% to Australia, 11 shots to 3. So again, first half, too slow out of the block. So what are we doing wrong again? Where are we going back to? And some of these are common occurrences, possession, holding the ball. So we're too slow with it. We lost it. So I'll go down, Chief, and I'll give you a couple of little stats. So by the 5th minute, we were 42 passes to Mexico to our 1. So if I wanted one effective pass in the first 5 minutes. And I'll break it down for you and where it's all in the setup in the way we are. We've talked about this in nearly every friendly. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Boss. We look for him a lot, to get us out of that transition out of the back, So he comes out with the ball. This was just in the 4th minute. He had 6 players. They're all isolated, not in position to receive the ball. So again, he's one-on-one. So he actually got 2 defenders against him because he was dragged out in that space, and they knew he was dangerous. So he had 2 players to beat. Again, won the shy at least, So he won the shy. We get the shy in the 4.5 minute mark. And we've got a poor touch off the shy, and we lose it a little bit, but we win it back. But again, where's Boss? He gets the ball back. Where are we? 8 players, Chief, isolated behind the ball, not in play. Where's the 9? Where's the 10? Nowhere near. So again, Boss is isolated again. So what happens? We turn over the ball just in the 5th minute. So Mexico break, but we're perfectly set up behind the ball to cut it down. They look dangerous, but we cut it down the 5th minute because we're already set up prior to the ball. But when we've got the ball, we're not set up to hold the ball. And O'Neill was caught inside, which is where he should be. But again, when Boss had the ball, there was no one forward of him. If he would have made that run out wide, if you have a look at it in the 4th and the 5th minute, you probably later in the 4th minute, if he would have made that run out wide, he could have easily held. Boss would have played him a simple ball down the line. Now you think, okay, we hold the ball. But again, it's like O'Neill is going, I can't leave the middle because if we lose it, I'm supposed to be in 6 and 8, so I can't go defensively do it. And it happened every pattern throughout the first half. This was just 2 or 3 moments that I picked out. Go watch it between the 4th and 5th minute, and you watch how Boss gets isolated 3 times, and we lose it once, and nearly cost us with the Mexico counter attack. But again, 8 players behind the ball. And they're not in positions behind the ball to hold it up either. This is a problem. And if you look at the channels and where we are positioning ourselves with the ball, the same patterns come through the first half. And this is why we can't hold the ball. We're defensively set up when we have the ball, when we should be in the opposite. And this is I think, lack of endeavour and lack of press forward to actually get in positions where we can actually hold possession, because we're too worried when we lose it. We're already there. We've got to be deep, you know what I mean? And we're too deep. And what's the point of having Boss isolated on the left wing if no one's coming towards him or making a run? 9 and 10 aren't making the runs. They're 30 yards apart. It's just going to turn over the ball. We're just lucky Boss on a couple of times beats a couple of players. But this is our exit out all the time. He's isolated. We're just lucky he's that good. He gets a couple of rounds. So have a look at that one, Chief, and I'll look forward to your opinion on it, and I'll look forward to the viewers' opinion on it, because it happens time and time again, and on both sides of the pitch. So look, what do? That someone's got to let this little block off, isn't it? This little hold the reins back, because when we have the ball, we've got to be confident enough to hold it. But you've got to get in positions to actually hold the football. So it's the same pattern every friendly what we're seeing: slow starts, not getting in front. And the second half, yes, we improved, but to me, was it because Mexico made the early subs? Most of their players went off at halftime or just after. You know what I mean? So did they get weaker and we got stronger, or what was the vice versa? We held our shape, or did we just take the game to us? So again, when we made our changes later on, we were building. If you look at the second half stats, they're quite different, aren't they? And let's have a look at them. We've got a complete turnaround in the second half where we had 59% of the possession and they had 41. So, and then we had 4 shots to their 2. So, you know what I mean? Again, it's good to see we can go the distance and we can change it. And we did create a couple of moments. But again, overall, if you go back to that first 40 minutes, we only had 27 passes in Mexico's half compared to them. They're 159. That's not going to be sustainable at this elite level. So I get that we're not 50-50 balance with some of these top sides, but we've got to at least be a little bit better and around that 40% mark if we're going to be effective, because you can't just give up the ball to these players and these internationals. They're just going to be way too good, and you're going to get punished at some point if you continue to allow pressure to come upon you. So there's a couple of opportunities to look at.
It's a bit hard for teams to counter-attack us when we've got 8 players behind the ball, mate. I don't think that's an option for them. But I just want to share with you, so obviously we had 76% of possession in the first half and only 3 shots, 0 of them on target. And just having a look back some of our previous games, so we have averaged less than 1 shot on target per game in our last 7 first halves. Mexico had 3 shots in the first 90 seconds, as I said before. Toure should have scored just before halftime, but like, is it tactical, or are we just starting slow? Because it's not just, I take your point about Mexico making the subs and how that might have disrupted them, but we were definitely better in the second half, and we've seen better performances in the second half in a fair few of our friendlies over the past 6 months or so. So is it a point that Popovic is making to keep it tight, get to the halftime break, 0-0, maybe you're 1-0 up if we're good enough, and then we go forward, and then we don't expose ourselves for the full 90 minutes? Or is it just something in the players where we're just starting slow and we're having to build our way into the games all the time?
I think both points are valid. We're tactically too deep to start with, and that's because we don't want to concede an early goal, and that's because we want to try to sustain and build into the game. But the problem is, by doing this over and over again, we've fallen into the trap, haven't we, of just trying to come too deep. And it's, even when we do have the ball, we're just too deep. And it's, again, because we don't want to be counted against. And I think it's tactical, because, yes, you're right, we want to build and sustain and stay in the game. And I think it's all in preparation to see if we can go
Yeah, my problem with it is that my problem with it is that in all these friendlies that we've played, whenever we've gone behind, we haven't changed enough. These are the perfect times to change it. These friendlies that we had, nothing on the line. If you're 1-0 down, or even create a scenario where you are 1-0 down, 20 minutes to go, what are we going to change? You play two strikers, you play more attacking players in certain positions. I genuinely don't know if we tactically know what to do when we're down 1-0. Like, this was, again, another opportunity to change things up and to do things differently. But although we did dominate possession, we still didn't create that many chances. And look, I don't know if his solution is to replace Toure with Kunda, but we want to see them on the field at the same time because these two are so dynamic together. And I think, again, like, Toure was isolated all game, and if you just put Kunda up, then he's going to be isolated, as opposed to the difference with someone like Kunda. He's going to feed off Toure, and he's going to be there with him when these breaks happen, and they can be very dangerous together. But if Toure's isolated up top, say from it's a ball from Metcalf, which means he's deeper, but then we don't have anyone up there supporting them. So we can be set up defensively and hope to get to a certain point in the game at 0-0, then try and jag a goal and 1-0 win, whatever. But what happens, as I said, something like today, we concede in the 20-odd minute, and then we have to change things up. So what do we do in that position? But you have to do it in a game. That's the problem. Like, you can do it in training all you want, but you have to do it in a game. Like, as you said, this is the atmosphere, of raucous 80,000 crowd, home team, blah, 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 blah. That's where you want to do it. You don't want to do it in front of your coaching staff when you go, oh, yeah, maybe we'll do this. Like, we saw Duke and Toure play together for like a minute. I think it was against USA. And that's all we've seen. It's the same point I was making around Volpato, Kunda and Toure starting together. Like, it's feasibly not going to happen in this setup. So, yeah, it might happen in future campaigns and that kind of thing, but not at this World Cup. It's just not going to happen. So it's just how we utilize those three and their skill set to try and get the wins. But all right, so today we saw, obviously, the squad. Let's run through who missed out on the squad. So Volpato, we've mentioned. Gauchi, you mentioned as well. Teddy Yangi, not in this squad today, as well as Brandon Borello. And then unused were Patrick Beach, Paul Izzo. Let's assume that they're in. Cam Devlin on the bench, not used, as was Guerrier, Kai Rolls, Milos Deganek, and Martin Boyle. So I would say that the four that are going to miss out are going to come from that lot, mates. Right, Mopper. Also, during the week, we had the Football Australia AGM, the much anticipated Football Australia AGM. So Football Australia is still in the red. Another financial loss confirmed, although smaller than last year's record deficit, projecting a $5 million loss in 2026 after their $15.3 million loss in 2025. And Chair Anta Isaac said they expect to break even in 2027. So they actually run their little brackets in the calendar year instead of the financial year, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, when we speak of those years, it's not cutting across. I suppose that works better seasonally for what they do. Cost cutting has started. Staff reductions show FA is now in savings mode. Yeah, that's for sure, with the 20% job cuts that we saw announced last week. National teams remain the money makers. Matildas and Socceroos still driving most of the commercial value, although I know that you don't necessarily agree with that offer. Border and politics continue. So this is interesting. So the AGM reinforced ongoing tension between FA and the A-Leagues over influence and direction. So there were two nominated board members backed by A-League clubs that didn't get the amount of votes required. So the votes, I believe, come from the likes of state federations and PFA. So they obviously have to give enough votes to these people that nominate for the board to get them in. So two of them didn't get enough votes. One did. So that leaves two spots available. And it's likely they're going to be filled by females under a constitutional amendment on Thursday that requires an even gender split among directors in order to be eligible for Australian Sports Commission funding, which does make sense as well. They also said the second division remains a priority. FA keeps pushing the Australian Championship as a future pathway for the game. Be absolutely lovely if that was connected somehow, and hopefully the APL and Football Australia working a bit more closely together means that that is a possibility in the future. One of the big takeaways from the day, though, was that Australian football has momentum publicly, but financially and structurally it's still flying to try and stabilise what it does. While it still maintains responsibility for football integrity in Australia, it is now working with the ABL to build Asia's best sports integrity ecosystem, according to Antiza, it's a pretty bold statement, given everything else that's happening Asia, but good to have the ambition. But I don't know, it was a bit of we weren't really sure what was going to come out of the AGM. There are some things, but some of it's a bit of a non-story as well. But there's a couple of little things in there that came out today, Hopper.
Yeah, welcome Paul Bitter, who joins the board. He got voted in. He was the one board member that you said. So, hope he's obviously got a background in economics, and that hopefully can bring that strong background into the financial structure. Oh, look, I definitely think the Socceroos and Matildas are definitely the money makers. Absolutely. I think we undersell the value of that. I think we should drive a harder bargain. But again, that's just an opportunity. I think listening to the second division about Australian Championship being that second tier like driver, that's good, because if that's the case, when it gets up and running, we get this second tier competition structurally right with the pyramid, that would be fantastic. I think that's a good sign to see that still on the high priority list. And yeah, look, there's no doubt around the financial, and yeah, look, a little bit of frustration from probably the A-League clubs with their board members, but you've got to be voted, and I like the gender balance and the strategic direction of that. So look, we had a little bit of public announcement. A couple of them dropped, board members like Mark Schwartz and that drop out before the AGM. So we don't know the real clear reasons why, but again, it's politics and the way it goes in sport sometimes. But yeah, look, I don't think they're probably either party would be happy where they're at. But the losses, like we said last week, are coming from mainly the A-League and holding it up and covering their loss. Like you said, you got record revenue deals, and by the calendar year they'll have the Asia Cup finances in there from the girls as well with the Matildas. So look, that financially, Australian football has always struggled to get that high economic standing, and still is trying to get into that market in Australia, which has always been a challenge. And it is, like you said, led by the top two, and we really need that to filter down. But we've had a good A-League this year. There's been a lot of positive signs around that recovery as well. So hopefully that can go through, and some Asian champions in an additional spot, which I think will help the A-League clubs as well. So there's a lot of pressure on the A-League, obviously, with their salary cap, because obviously retaining the talent to continue to drive that is obviously a good opportunity. But look, they've got some work to do. We see some strain with the APL, but we've seen some positive signs that they're trying to work together through that. So look, the ecosystem and pyramid, the fight goes on, doesn't it? And like you said, I didn't really get too much clarity out, or like on what the direction is. And I know Martin's pushing that high level, but they've had to deal with this first. He's obviously had a program when he comes in, and this is his first AGM. So let's see in the next 12 months, if we can get even, or they said they're going to make another loss before they get even. But let's see if we can get some real momentum. The World Cup's going to be big, I think, for Australian football, as it always is. It's going to be massive. If we can go deeper into this tournament, it'll definitely continue to raise the profile of Australian football. But there's still, like you said, there's still plenty to work on here, and they know it from both sides. But at least I think going into this year, or their calendar year, what they call it, I see a little bit more alignment, even though there's still some battlegrounds, and which there always is going to be in those positions with the APL. At least I still see some continuity starting to come together around the strategic direction, and it'll be up for them to get together and to execute it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's always going to be that friction. There's just too many levels of football in this country for that not to happen. But look, at the very least, at the top, I think some of those key components of Football Australia, the PFA, the APL, all kind of, getting along and making sure that what they're doing is for the betterment of the entirety of the game. I think that's a really important thing that they need to achieve together, and kind of almost getting out of each other's way in a sense and just trying to push things forward, I think would be really advantageous. And let's hope that through this, and I think that the finances are definitely not a good sign, but I think, if they're projecting that we're going to get back to some kind of parity in a couple of years' time, then that's a bit of a springboard then to move up. And Martin's obviously come in. He seems like a smart guy, and he's realizing where they need to reset a little bit, and they can start at a bit of a lower base and start to grow while still investing in the right areas as well. So hopefully that's the case, and it's onwards and upwards from this point.
Yep, absolutely. All right, mate, let's go on the field around Europe as they finish up the business end of the season, or like you said, not sure which part of the business it is, but there were some important games and important trophies on the line the week that's just gone. Do you want to talk us through some of the big moments involving Australians through the week?
Yeah, I'll talk through some, but I'll leave some for you as well. Let's start for Crystal Palace winning the Europa Conference League. What an achievement that is for James Holland. They're at Crystal Palace. Obviously, Oliver Glasner's had some very nice words to say of the former Socceroo in the last couple of weeks, mainly around his connection to some of the younger players and having recently retired, and making that conduit between the two groups as seamless as he possibly can. And he seems to think that James Holland has a very, very high ceiling for his coaching future. So that's a really positive sign. And yeah, well done to Crystal Palace. I'm sure their fans would be absolutely thrilled. The FA Cup, the Community Shield, and now the Europa Conference League, all in the space of 12 months. So what an achievement it is for the London club.
Yeah, massive win. Europa League next year. Who takes over at Crystal Palace? That will be the big question. And where James Holland goes, does he stay or does he go? Glasner's been linked to AC Milan. Does that open up the opportunity for James Holland to follow? Or what's been linked with Crystal Palace, surprisingly, is that Frank Lampard is one of the favourites to join. So does Frank Lampard bring his own, or does Holland have a space there? So, and obviously tackling Europa League. So, yeah, we're still, obviously coaches are starting to come through now. Players are starting to move as well just before the World Cup. So it's a bit of a tricky time and a tricky window, but you'd think Palace would make an announcement within the 7 days. I wouldn't think the World Cup would go on without Palace making decisions. You've already seen Liverpool sack their coach. You've already seen players making some moves already. So I think watch this space in the next 7 days where James Holland lands. And I think Glasner, I've got no doubt that there's strong links to AC Milan, that he'll reading all the reports that that's probably where he'll go. And I'm sure Glasner would probably have him on board, and we could see an Australian over in AC Milan again. So yeah, it'd be very interesting. Obviously, these are only rumours and paper talk. So yeah, watch this space. And look, he's done everything that he possibly could, James Holland, and what a moment for him being involved in. And we can't forget too, obviously too, we've got the Women's FA Cup tonight too with Dario Vidicic. So great to see a lot of Aussie coaches making more headlines in Europe and in the UK.
James Holland over at AC Milan would be very cool to see. Staying in Italy, staying in Italy, we saw Roma win the Coppa Italia. Winona Heatley played a big part in that one, and obviously that means the domestic double for them after winning the league. So huge achievement for Winona Heatley in her first season in Italy. Annalise Rasmussen on the other side of the pitch for Juventus, losing in the final, unfortunately for her, but massive achievement for Winona Heatley. And speaking of Matildas lifting silverware, Tegan Micah won the French league overnight as well. So well done to Tegan Micah. A massive achievement for her as well after making her move from the WSL last season.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations, Winona Heatley. Good, solid first season with Roma. They only lifting 2 trophies and has played a good part of Roma's one. Hasn't been in, week out, and played some Champions League, entrenched herself in the Matildas. So she's personally on the football grounds had a fantastic year. And obviously, yeah, look, I think our young girl over there for Juventus has got a long future ahead. She's only just made that transfer the last few months. So I'm looking forward to a much pre-season stronger year. I think Juventus will be right up Roma's challenging next year. And what about those cool sunnies for Tegan Micah? Did you see that photo, Chief? They were pretty cool sunnies, hey, to win the trophy and
Too
get
good
a
for
bit.
me, mate.
Yeah,
Too good
too
for
cool
me.
for me too. But hey, what a shot and great moment, especially after that concussion problem that she had. Obviously, when we had the Asia Cup, but good to see her bounce back and in good health and lifting the trophy. Obviously, with some of the coolest sunglasses I've seen.
All right, let's go back into Europe. Marco Tilio, remember him? He actually got a rare start for Rapid Vienna, and they're into the Europa Conference League qualifiers, which will no doubt start very, very soon and make a long season for Rapid Vienna. And Noah Bodic, obviously he's out with that long-term injury, but his Austria Vienna have qualified for the Europa Conference League as well. So some positive signs for some Aussies sneak into Europe, and the ones that are in qualifiers, we'll keep an eye on them before the full season proper starts. But good nod for those couple of guys.
Yeah, much needed for Tilio. I mean, he's probably had a very frustrating season, but yeah, look, he'll start there with a full pre-season without the transfer that he had with Celtic and the delay. So he'll be able to get that, hopefully, that foot running next year. And no, Boric, yeah, had an injury-plagued season. Again, hopefully will bounce back. And with both teams, obviously, they're both of their teams in Europe. It's good that they'll probably need the full depth of squad, so they'll get plenty of opportunity.
All right, let's go to Chinese Super League, mate. Some mixed results here for our Aussie coaches. Unfortunately, Kevin Muscat's Shanghai Port just can't get their season going. They scored a late goal to equalise, but then conceded an even later one to lose 3-2. That game was on Friday night in Australia. And then today we've seen Zhejiang Professional, Ross Aloisi's team, with a 2-0 win, which is positive for them. And then John Aloisi's Chengdu Rongcheng go back to winning ways with a 1-0 win as well. So Chengdu Rongcheng flying out front on 37 points, 13 clear of second place. We've got Zhejiang Professional in there at 8th, but a tight, very tight mid-table. And then Shanghai Port, unfortunately, down in 13th, only 4 points above the relegation zone at the halfway point of the season. So very, very challenging season for Kevin Muscat so far.
Yep, hasn't had a good start. But anyway, we'll watch that space as China rolls on through obviously only one of very few leagues that are going at the moment. Let's look at the transfers. Let's go back home to the A-League, and Macarthur FC announced some ins and outs this week, mainly outs. Harrison Sawyer, big out. Geez, Chief, I think he'd go well with a couple of A-League sides. I could be thinking of a couple like Perth and Western Sydney, Brisbane. I think he'd be a great addition. Sawyer probably pushed out with the amount of competition. We also seen Joshua Domesky, Friends Delhi. We've seen him in the under-20s, so he'd be one looking for probably a couple of opportunities around maybe Adelaide and Perth, and I would say that would be a good landing spot for him. Where he's shown good potential, so probably hasn't gone on as much as Johnny Yull and that, but he had a good under-20s tournament last year. Simon Grosjean and Joe Dong Won, Matt German, getting on in time now. Walter Scott, Rafael Duran, Cristian Popovic, Luke Bratton, and Chris Economides. There's some bigger names of the past. Very interesting to see what Luke Bratton does. And Cristian Economides hasn't really had the best year, but he's still a handy player in the A-League. So what do you think of those departures?
Well, I agree with you about Sawyer. I think he'd be a good pickup for a few A-League clubs. Matt German, yeah, I'm not sure if he'll go around again. He could be a good experienced player for maybe one of the teams that were down towards the bottom of the table this year. Luke Bratton, he's been linked with the Western Sydney Wanderers, obviously previously played under Ufuk Talay at Sydney FC, so that might be an interesting reunion for him. That would be about his 9th A-League club that Luke Bratton has played for. Yeah, and Chris Economides, not sure where he's at with his career actually. Very lot of potential there, but hasn't really shown it over the past couple of seasons. What about the Jets, though, mate? 8 departures: Mark Natter, Kota Mizunuma, Clayton Taylor, Lockie Bayliss, Ben Gibson, Noah James, Lucas Cicluna, Ben Van Dawson, and Christian Bracco, all departures after the expiration of their contracts. Some big outs for them. There's probably at least 4 or so there that were regular starters.
Yeah, Clayton Taylor, massive. Lockie Bayless, massive. Ben Gibson as well. Mark Natter, yeah, they're big losses. But obviously, when like the A-League, the contract runs out and there's probably better money on the table rather than the Jets trying to fit and squeeze everyone in, even though they've got Asia. It's disappointing to see when some of your top liners go. But look, they've got some big ins coming into. Badalado will be back next year. Obviously, Bernarcello on the bench too. So they've got some depth to cover that. But geez, yeah, where they go will be interesting. It's just Europe beckon for Clayton Taylor, or would you even think
Well,
Ben Gibson could play?
Clayton Taylor's reportedly already signed with MacArthur. Just
Oh, okay.
reported, but which I don't understand that move, honestly. But
No Asia either there.
must be something going on there. Yeah.
Yep. No, look, this is the difference. If you want to progress your career, you'd want to be playing Asian Champions League. But again, it could come down to money, and they've got to look after themselves. Would you think Ben Gibson would be a tip for Europe? Do you think, or do you think he needs a bit more time?
I think he'll probably land somewhere else in the A-League, to be honest. He obviously wasn't getting starts at Newcastle, but Lockie Rose moving on. But they've also just signed Nikos Virgos in the last couple of days. So no doubt that Virgos will be thinking that he's the starting striker. Maybe Gibson's been told he wouldn't be, and that's why he's looking for other opportunities. So Virgos coming in is interesting as well. Would have thought they would have gone a bit more youthful, but I know we've seen some signs of life for Virgos, but probably not the consistency for Melbourne Victory.
I think that's a good playing style though for Virgos, don't you think? I think I think they'll be able to get the best out of him, and I think in Asia he'd be probably handy too. So I think that's a really good signing. I know Virgos was bigger things were expected, but sometimes that that playing style impacts the way you play, and I think he'd be probably perfect for Newcastle to seemingly fit in there. I'd probably expect some big things if he can't launch at Newcastle. Then I think it'd be a bit of trouble for him staying in the A-League. But yeah, I think that's a good signing. I've seen signs of Virgos. I think there's a lot more there, and I think Newcastle's probably a good home. All right, mate. Let's move on to Wellington. Josh Almami and Retre has gone. Carlos Almeto and Manjaka James, Dan Edwards, Luke Supek and Nikola Milanovic have gone, and Chris Greenacre has re-signed as head coach. That's massive. What an end to the season Chris Greenacre brought to Wellington. Brought much stability and a much more simpler playing style. I don't think there's too many players there that are going to be missed, and I think it'll give Chris an opportunity to probably recruit around Wellington to make them stronger. They've got a couple of key players in there that definitely are top elite players that brought in. So last year, I think with a couple more good signings, we could see a little rise from Wellington.
Josh Olwanyemi, probably unfortunately for him, his most famous part of this season was the own goal that he scored in the derby. Paolo Retre only came in this season, as did Carlo Armiento and Nikola Miljuznic. So I think with the change of coach, you're probably going to see some players that were brought in that aren't going to be given further opportunities. Mandrake James played a fair bit as well. So a few gaps to plug, but given the way that Wellington Phoenix's season was as a whole, probably not the biggest misses, and they'll be looking to bounce back bigger and stronger next season. But yeah, agree. Chris Greenacre is a good appointment as head coach. Also at the Wanderers, we've seen Aiden Simmons leave for a chance over in Japan. Not sure if that's going to be J1 or J2, but looking to expand his career and go abroad. So we wish Aiden Simmons all the best over there. But certainly my highlight's going to be being glued to my phone to see the 26-man squad for the Socceroos tomorrow morning. And then, yes, of course, the Matildas leading up to those couple of friendlies against Mexico next weekend, which would be really awesome. But another big week in Australian football. Thanks for your time. Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next time. But in the meantime, enjoy football.